Once more, it is What's Involved and another great guest for you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a lady who is known as the relationship warrior. She passionately advocates healthy personal and professional relationships. Who is she? She's Paula Quinsee. Hello, Paula.
Hi, David. Good to be here.
It's very good to have you along with us. Man, you've done a lot of stuff. So let's start off right at the very beginning, because I always like to find out how people end up where they are currently compared to where they were. And I think you have a particularly interesting story to tell. So tell me a little bit about Paula.
Absolutely. So in my previous lifetime, as I like to call it, I was in corporate. I had originally studied marketing and advertising, and I was working for large corporates like Standard Bank and Nedbank and KFC. But in my personal journey, I was in a 6.5-year relationship that had hit rock bottom, and we were going for therapy. And our therapist referred us to Imago relationship therapy. And so we went off on this couples weekend, couples retreat to kind of save our relationship. And I was just blown away at the impact that Imago had on me, and just helped me understand who I was and how I had got to where I was based on my upbringing and my childhood, and how that had influenced and shaped my perspective on the world, and particularly in terms of relationships and how to have healthy relationships. And so it just had such a profound effect on me, and there and then I decided that I wanted to learn more about this stuff and teach it, because life was too short to be unhappy, especially in our relationships, which is supposed to be our biggest source of support and nurturing and care. And so that's kind of where it started. And so I trained up and studied to become a certified Imago relationship therapy facilitator and educator. And that was in about 2009, and I started doing it part-time in the evenings and the weekends, with a view that one day, when I left the corporate world in my second career, I would step into some form of coaching or, helping people. So that was the start of it.
Okay,
And
but you've sort of, if you don't mind me saying, you've kind of glossed over some bits that I think are incredibly important in terms of your journey, and often, people that listen to this show or shows like it, they'll sit and think, my life is an absolute mess. It's falling down about my ears, and nothing works, and it's just horrible. But I mean, you lost your mother at a very early age. You were a victim of abuse. You used to do binge eating, low self-esteem. I mean, you were in a very dark place.
Absolutely. I think the defining moment or catalyst started when I was 7 years old. My mom died in an accident. And so that was kind of, I guess, where it started. Growing up with a father who was emotionally unavailable. I always tell the story that I think when my mom died, he kind of died with her too, particularly on an emotional level. And I suppose also from a generational thing. He grew up in a generation where it was that typical, the man was the breadwinner. He went out and, he earned the bread, or the bacon, so to speak, and the woman was, at home nurturing the children. And we didn't have that anymore. So I grew up with an emotionally unavailable father. And as a result of that, I didn't develop the skills on how to have healthy attachment when it came to relationships. Which resulted in me being in therapy in that particular relationship, because it was yet another failed relationship. But after that, I experienced bouts of emotional abuse, or sexual abuse, should I say, at around age sort of 12, 13. And that obviously had a huge impact in terms of how I saw myself from a body image point of view, in that sex was something that was dirty and taboo, and it was shameful, and as a result, I grew up with body image issues. And so around 18, 19, started binge eating, in terms of I suppose a form of control, wanting to control, and being like society and, you know, the glossy magazines, the perfect body, the perfect image, the model type of perspective on the world, you know, that if I was this beautiful thing, that, you know, people would love me, only to find out that of course is false. And so, yeah, I had a string of failed relationships behind me, and that's how I ended up in therapy with yet another failed relationship. And so it was going through that whole process, and I guess learning to love myself and accept myself for who I was, who I am, how I got to where I was, the battle scars of life, so to speak, and trying to find my identity, find who I was, and be comfortable in my own skin, which took quite a few years of therapy before I finally got it to it, I guess, a normality. That doesn't mean to say that today I don't have days of doubt. We all know about the imposter syndrome. We all experience the imposter syndrome. So I don't know if that ever goes away, to be honest.
It's actually quite strange. I was actually chatting to somebody about that very thing yesterday, about imposter syndrome, and how particularly amongst entrepreneurs, you've got this lurking thing inside of you that says, what happens if somebody calls you out? What happens if somebody challenges you and goes, you're actually not as good as you like to say you are? And it's a massive, massive thing. I mean, it's not just, you know, and it's not just, you've just mentioned it, it's not just entrepreneurs that go through it, but I think people who put themselves out there in the world are more prone to it. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to a very good friend and mentor and role model who is an entrepreneur. And I said to him, does it ever go away? Do you ever get to a point in your own business where you feel like, finally I know what I'm doing? And he's been in business for 12, 14 plus years. And he said it never goes away. There are days where he sometimes questions, what is he doing? Which I found quite surprising, but at the same time, quite comforting as well.
Well, I've got to say, I'm right there. I have days like that as well, and there's sometimes when I think, should I even actually get out of bed, because I'm just making the stuff up as I go along. But talking about going along, you then subsequently have studied some other things that I'd like to just find out about, so we can complete our setting of the scene. You've studied neurolinguistic programming. Although the term these days is more neuro-linguistic psychology, I guess, and a PDA analyst and a MyPDA coach and trainer, which is kind of strange because being old-fashioned like I am, PDA stands for a personal, like your smartphone or something.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way. It is part of our apps, I guess, our apps in terms of how we're wired and how we think. So that's probably a good analogy. Yeah, so I started off with Imago relationship therapy, which is primarily deals with couples and couples coaching, couples therapy, couples counseling, are the terms that are used out there. And then I found that I had quite a few individuals coming to me, and I wanted to equip myself to be able to help individuals as well, which is where I then looked at doing the NLP, as it's often commonly referred to, or neuro-linguistic programming or neuro-linguistic practitioner, which is really around the language that we use that conditions the way we think or the way we behave or the way we respond and react in a very simplistic term. It's our conditioning. So I studied that as a way to equip me with more tools to deal with both individuals and couples. And then I started kind of blending my own personal experience and my own personal journey and some of the things that had helped me overcome where I had been, and then taking my corporate experience, obviously through corporate, as I kind of climbed the ranks, so to speak. I'd been on a couple of leadership programs and development programs and, those kind of things. So I started blending those tools and insights that I'd learned. And I believe that life is a lifelong journey of learning. So I'm always looking to learn and grow and develop, whether it's reading, talking to people, attending seminars or conferences, etc. And so that's how I started getting into the space where I now started working with both individuals in their personal capacity and then in the workplace as well, in corporates. And for me, it's all about relationships. So first of all, do I have a healthy relationship with myself? And then how am I showing up and how am I co-creating that space in my personal world with my personal relationships? And then in the corporate space with my relationships in the workplace. And so that's kind of where I've evolved to and where I am today. With the PDA, it simply stands for Personal Development Assessment, and it's a type of psychometric assessment that measures 3 key areas: its behavior traits, its emotional indicators, and its energy indicators, or energy levels. And it's really around developing self-awareness around how I think or how I make decisions, how I deal with people, so introvert, extrovert, the way that I like to work. Am I the kind of person that is very routine orientated and I like certainty and stability, or do I cope better with change and working on multiple things? And then do I need a structured environment because I like that sort of that guidance, whether it's systems or processes or people, or am I more of a big picture thinker? And so that's kind of where I've got today in terms of my training. And then I've also obviously done a couple of other courses and stuff here and there, and looking to do some more as well.
Fantastic stuff. My special guest is Paula Quinsee. She's basically, let's just be honest, your go-to relationship warrior. And it's all about personal, professional relationships for Paula. When we come back, we'll chat more and find out what else Paula has done. This is What's Involved. And we're back on What's Involved with my special guest, Paula Quinsee. Paula, so just before the break, we were talking about some of the stuff that you had done. You're also an author, though. You've written, 2 books, I believe, or guides. What do you call them? Guides or books?
I suppose I like to call them guides because they have practical tips and tools and templates that you can work with to help you shift from wherever you are. So I suppose they fall under the genre of self-help guides. Okay,
and I mean, you've had some wonderful endorsements there. I mean, the international EQ guy, Harvey Deutschendorf, Margaret Hirsch, who I happen to know, what a firebomb that lady is, and Colleen Larson as well. So you certainly, you've had some very, very impressive people talk about what you do and how you do it, and they've acknowledged what you do. You've also been a TEDx speaker. What else have you done?
I never kind of intentionally set out to write books. I always look up to authors and think, wow, they're amazing people. And then one of my friends and colleagues had written books, and I was like chatting to her, and like, how did you do it? Surely it took you years to write this book. And she shared her formula and how she went about doing it. And I thought, well, okay, let me give it a try and see how that goes. And so, I never intended to write books, but I took my personal experiences and some of the tools that I've used and put it into an easy, it looks like a short book and a very easy, quick read, but the depth lies in doing the work after each section. That's where the I guess the aha moments or the nuggets of gold come from. And so, I have been an international speaker as well. I've spoken in places like Amsterdam and Istanbul, and obviously locally here in South Africa. I'm very blessed to have awesome role models around me like Colleen and Margaret and Harvey. And on a more personal level, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, I suppose you could say. I've done things like I've run the Comrades Marathon, 2 Oceans Marathon. I've climbed Kilimanjaro. I've done the Inca Trail in Machu Picchu. Jumped out of an airplane, scuba diving, all of those kind of things.
which is for me so refreshing to hear, because if you look at your history and your past and where you were at that time, you've got every reason to just absolutely have given up and said, okay, no, there's nothing, this is my lot in life, and this is who I am, and yet you didn't, and you came to a realization at some stage, I'm guessing, your past is not who you are.
Definitely. I was in therapy for a good couple of years, just trying to work on myself and understand myself, because I suppose that the easiest way to describe it is I had this empty feeling, this void inside, and I was trying to chase it externally until I realized that, I was seeking all the wrong things. I needed to seek it from within. And so, as you say, and what I always like to tell others is, your past does not define who you are. You do. And you get to choose who you want to be and how you want to live your life, which is a lot of the work that I do in the clients that I work with, and the courses and the programs that I run, is just, at the end of the day, it always comes back to self. And before you can give to others or share with others or love others, you have to be able to love yourself, and flaws and all. We're all human beings and we all have flaws. There's no such thing as the perfect person or the perfect relationship.
I would agree with you 100% over there. Now, let's move on, because you've got this incredible background. You've got an incredible history of being able to help people. How has this pandemic affected not only you, but I think it's affected a whole lot of people around us. At this stage, one of my pet peeves is everybody going around saying we've got to adjust to this new normal, when at the end of the day, we've got no idea what normal really is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Funny enough, I was on a stress webinar yesterday with one of my colleagues talking about this very thing, that it is not normal what we're living under at the moment. We've never experienced a pandemic before, so we have very little frame of reference where it's concerned. And usually when change comes along, we get the option to buy into change. We want to change and we willingly take the steps to change. But change was thrust upon us. The one day we were living our lives, the next day we were in extreme lockdown. So that whole sense of our world being turned upside down is very true. Everything was taken away from us. Our freedom, our movement, we had severe restrictions. We were now, from a home family dynamics point of view, we were in each other's faces and spaces 24/7. So there were extreme stressful situations and environments, and with that came the uncertainty and the fear of the unknown, which we still don't know as far as the virus is concerned. And obviously job security in terms of, financial impact and job losses and economy and all of these things. So it is extremely stressful and anxious times that we're in. It's not normal to live in these conditions, so to speak.
It's interesting that you say that. When lockdown happened, I've always maintained, and people often laugh at me, and they sort of, and it's one of the reasons I love being on radio and doing those kind of things, is because I love people. I just don't necessarily want to see them all the time. And before lockdown, my big sort of thing that I used to do is like, if I don't ever have to leave the house again, I'll be very, very happy. And prior to lockdown, I think my record was 2 weeks without going out anywhere. And then lockdown happened, and it was like, well, guess what, buddy? Now we're going to really test you. And I've got to tell you, those first, I suppose, 2 months, I fell apart. I think everybody in the family really kind of fell apart. And it didn't just happen to us. And I think this is something that with this pandemic, you need to see it as well, you don't need to, but you can choose to see it as a positive, because it's made us look at a whole bunch of stuff in our lives.
Very much so. I think the pandemic has taught us to really look at what's important versus what's valuable. So important being things like family, relationships, friends, lifestyle, etc. And what's valuable in terms of, we've learned that we can do without so much that we thought we couldn't before.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, with us during that time and during this time of COVID, and I've got to say, I sort of feel like we're coming out of that particular sort of stress and everything, but it shows cracks. It really exposes weaknesses, both in business, and in your relationships, because now suddenly you're with people 24/7 and you actually have to see them, and you can't just hide away. And a lot of times that brings immense stress and pressure on people. Is this something that you've noticed?
Yes, so from a global perspective, when China was one of the first countries to come out of lockdown, and they were one of the first ones to report a spike in divorce cases post coming out of lockdown, we've started seeing those stats increase around the world as well as here in South Africa. And I think there's two camps here. One is those couples that didn't have a good or healthy relationship to start with. They had a very rocky foundation. And now being thrust into each other's spaces being confined for that period of time, as you say, there was no way to escape. Because often we use work as an escape. It allows us to go away. They put some distance between us and our partners that kind of doesn't rock the boat so much. We avoid dealing with, or we find ways of coping with, and then, we come back to the relationship and it's that daily grind routine. We get home, we have dinner, we maybe watch a bit of TV and kind of then we go to bed, and then it's eat, sleep, press, repeat and replay kind of thing. But on the other hand, it's brought some, a lot of couples are saying it's brought them closer together, being together. Now, there is some truth in this, but I'm really questioning whether it's brought them closer together in terms of really deepening their relationship and having those deeper, meaningful conversations and talking about real stuff. Or is it just the fact that we're spending more time together and we are kind of helping each other a lot more when it comes to the household chores and responsibilities than in the past? Because that was often a complaint that I used to get is, you're always at work, you're always working late, or I'm always looking after the kids and doing this, and you just get to kind of do your thing. It's a common complaint that comes up in relationships. So yes, it has brought couples closer together, but I'm questioning on what real level or what deeper level? Or is it just the fact that we're now spending more time in each other's space?
All right. Well, my special guest is Paula Quinsee. We will be back. It is What's Involved. When we come back, Paula, what I'd like to chat to you a bit about is if people who are listening to this broadcast are experiencing emotional issues and life just generally sucks, are there some tips we can give people listening to help them start working through this?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. We'll talk about that when we come back. It is What's Involved. And we are back. What's Involved? It is my special guest is Paula Quinsee, an amazing woman who's done some amazing things. And Paula, I must tell you, your passion for your work definitely shines through. Let's talk now about those people who, their entire lives have been turned upside down and families have been turned upside down. It's been an awful time for a lot of people. Some people have adjusted. In fact, some people have thrived during this time, but there's others who are still in a very, very dark place. In terms of relationships, where would one start?
So I think the first thing is to really use this time to reflect on how healthy is our relationship. Now, people often assume when I say healthy relationships that means we don't have any issues or we don't have any conflict or we don't have any disagreements, and that's not true because it's unrealistic. Just like life has ups and downs, so do our relationships, personally and professionally. So there's three sort of key questions that couples can sit down and ask themselves and reflect on. And the first one is, what's working in our relationship? And how do we keep doing more of that? Because we're very quick to focus on what's not working and point out our partner's faults or, what's, the issues in the relationship. But we very seldom sit down and go, well, what is working? And how do we make sure we keep doing more of that to keep growing and building our relationship? So that's the first question. The second question is, what areas or where can we improve? Now, this is very different to what's not working. Because when we ask the question, what's not working, we're very quick to pull out the dustbin and all the rubbish we've swept under the carpet. So what areas can we improve on is more of a positive spin on it, to say, okay, well, we can improve on this and we can improve on that, and that kind of thing. And then the third question they can ask is, how can I be a better partner for you? Often we assume our partners can read our minds, or they know what we want or what we need, but unfortunately we are not mind readers. And if we don't share it with our partner, if we don't let our partner in to what's going on inside of us, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I needing? Where am I at right now? How do I need you to be there for me? Our partners don't know how to do that. So when we share it and when we let them into our worlds, our hopes, our dreams, our fears, all of those things, it helps create a stronger connection, a stronger bond. We feel closer to each other. We feel supported. There's a level of trust. And it just helps to create that stronger foundation that together couples can grow and they can weather the storms when they come.
I like that. And I like what you're saying, because it is. And I think so many of us have these preconceived ideas of what a relationship should be. And it's all moonlight and roses and Valentines and hearts and romantic dinners. And we often sort of overlook in our ideal world that the reality is really not like that. And I've spoken to a couple of people, and I've said, and I firmly believe a relationship is something you have to put effort in. Not necessarily, I don't know if I'd call it work, but you do certainly have to put some effort in. And a lot of people are shocked at that, and they're like, but why? And I'm going, well, because, when all the chemicals and everything are rushing at the beginning of a relationship, you're prepared to overlook so much, and it's all rosy. We look at the world through our rose-tinted spectacles. But when that wears off, which it invariably does, then we become, we get to a place, at least I believe, where we generally need to sit down and say to ourselves, hell, do I even like the person I'm with?
Absolutely. That honeymoon romantic phase, as we call it, research shows it can last anything from 3 months to 24 months before we start moving into the next phase of our relationship cycle. So there's a typical cycle that all couples go through. And we go through it time and time again for as long as we're with that person, because we find coping mechanisms to help us deal with or avoid dealing with what's going on in our relationships. And coping mechanisms can be anything from being a workaholic, so throwing yourself into work. It can be sports, hobbies, social media is a big one, addictions, and any form of addictions, from emotional eating to obviously alcohol to substance abuse, whether it's things like pain medication and sleeping tablets to hardcore drugs. We can find all sorts of coping mechanisms.
Yeah, I've seen the effects of some of those coping mechanisms as well, and I've seen people I know, for example, that had absolutely nothing left that they were prepared to work on, and they were very, very wealthy, and turned to gambling, and that just everything came crumbling down, which is kind of scary. Paula, what I'd also like to talk about though is we can as couples, we can start and we can ask those 3 questions. Where do we end up though? And maybe this is something that we should talk about when we come back and we start wrapping up the interview. But does this translate into corporate? And I think we can talk about that a little bit more when we come back. It is What's Involved. My special guest is Paula Quinsee. And we are back with Paula. Paula, does it translate into relationships? Because a lot of people look at this kind of stuff and go, oh, it's very airy-fairy, and it doesn't really translate into the corporate world. And we spend so much of our time there. What sort of an impact does this have, and has the COVID epidemic had a huge impact on your relationships in terms of your job environment?
Absolutely. With a lot of people working from home, our homes have become our workplace now, whereas before it was our sacred space, our sanctuary that we would go away to recharge and re-energize ourselves. With the majority of people working from home now, we're having to change the way, especially from a leadership point of view, in terms of we are now managing people in their personal spaces. We are stepping into their worlds with, through Zoom meetings and stuff like that. We're getting to see the environment that they live in, the distractions and the disruptions that are going on around them, whether it's children in the background, dogs barking, connectivity issues, whatever that might be. And psychologically, we're not wired to be connected or online all the time. It actually, they've done a lot of research around the impact on our brain, obviously, and Zoom fatigue or digital fatigue is a very real thing. And so corporates and leadership are now starting to become more and more aware and understanding of how important mental health is in the workplace. And whereas before, and I say this respectfully, a lot of them were, let's have our annual wellness day and tick the box exercise. We've helped our employees become more informed or aware of health, but that's kind of where it stopped. Whereas now it needs to be a key component of business strategies and business models going forward, because your people are your business. And if your people aren't well, your business isn't going to be well.
I think it's even more vital now because, because of where we are. Yes, we're now at level 2, and I've seen a lot of people going out and acting like crazy people and going, yay, freedom, but the virus hasn't gone anywhere. So, for the foreseeable future, there's a lot of things that are not going to change in the way that we're hoping they would. But Paula, if somebody is listening now and they are a business owner, maybe they're an executive, a small business, medium business, what sort of advice can we give to people like that in terms of their staff relationships? Because those are also, as we just discussed, vitally important.
I think so. This is where it's, how well do you know your people, and and do you know what kind of support your people need? So as you were saying earlier, some people are loving being at home. They're careful what you wish for, because so many people said, I just wish I could work from home or stay at home all day. So those are what we kind of, without labeling them too much, more of the introverts. And they are loving working from home, and they don't want to go back to the office space. But there are other people that aren't coping working from home, more of the extroverted people, the people that need interaction and social connection, but also people that prefer more of a structured environment. And getting up and going to work every day and coming home gave us some form of structure or routine. And those people may need a little bit more support from their managers or their leaders. So really getting to know your people, really checking in with your people in terms of how they're doing on a human level, and not just from a work perspective. And, have you done what you said you were going to do? So also learning to measure output versus deliverables. A lot of managers are struggling to manage remotely. It's causing, so I know someone that their manager, they've had to check in with their manager every morning, and every afternoon they've had to submit a timesheet of what they've done during the day. So some people are reverting to micromanaging, and that's causing conflict. It's adding to the stress and the anxiety and all those kind of things. So it's having to learn to lead differently, having to learn to really connect, and as you said, making the effort. And it doesn't have to be a huge effort. It's just every day, if I can schedule 5 minutes or 10 minutes where I just chat to one of my employees and find out how they're doing, how's their family going, how they're coping with juggling being a parent and a teacher and homeschooling kids if they've got kids, or if they're living on their own, are they coping being alone? Are they really feeling that isolation? And the risk there is it can lead to depression.
Yeah, it's scary because as we're talking, I'm busy thinking about my situation and what's happened to me. And I've said it before on the show. I always used to be one of those old-fashioned radio people that was like, the only way you can have a decent interview with somebody is if you have bums on seats. So if you're sitting opposite somebody in a recording or radio studio, that is what gives value. And of course, that just totally. And I was quite arrogant about that. I mean, I know I turned down guests before who wanted to do telephonic interviews, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, no, it just doesn't work for me. It'll never work for me. Well, guess what? Now it only works for me because that's the only thing. And I know the mindset change it took to get me into this space where I am now, where I'm going, okay, this is the way, my reality looks right now. And if I want to keep on delivering value, I need to work within these parameters.
Yes. And this is where, from an individual level and from a corporate or a business level, we're having to reskill, upskill, and even redeploy ourselves in this new environment. So with the fourth industrial revolution, it was all about AI and robotics and data and this kind of thing. Whereas we've moved into the fifth industrial revolution, where it's all about purpose and meaning. And we've had to become tech savvy. Now, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Are you there?
I lost you there for a moment.
This is the war cry of Zoom is, can you hear me?
Exactly. So yeah, it's about, we've had to become tech savvy with dealing with technology like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, or whatever platforms it is that you're using. Whereas before we had to get used to, automation and robotics and data intelligence and stuff like that. We've had to, so even though our job title and role and our function has stayed the same, the way we work and where we work has changed. And we've had to get our heads around that, and some people are still struggling with that. Same with some companies. Some of them are still struggling with people working from home. And now as we go into level 2 and potentially level 1, some companies are looking at, how do we bring the workforce back? Is it a 30%? Do we take turns, 1 week on, 1 week off? Do we do shift? That kind of thing. So businesses are also in a tough situation, grappling with how to solve these things, because they've never had to do it before either. So I think from both sides, employee, employer, have a bit of compassion and empathy and understanding. We're all going through this, but differently. It's okay to not be okay. There are going to be days where we just don't want to crawl out of bed. We just want to hide away from the world. And that's okay. It's reality. And you're allowed to feel those things. Being more accommodating or flexible and adaptable. If I'm homeschooling my kids, I'm not going to be online at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning because I'm teaching my kids. So managing hours and online, and what does that mean, and how do we measure output and productivity versus deliverables or KPIs or whatever it is that it used to be that you were measuring. And I think also, more importantly, from a self-care point of view and businesses being more accommodating, is mental health and well-being, and putting boundaries down and being able to say no. So sorry, no, I can't be online at 10 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever. Finding the hours that work for you. I've got a lot of people saying they're working longer hours now than ever before, but they are feeling drained. They are feeling fatigued. So taking time out for self and taking those breaks. And the research now is showing that after 40 minutes, people start feeling fatigue, and after 2 hours, the stress levels go up.
Yeah, I can see how that happens, because there's many times that I spend quite extended period of time online, and you do afterwards you feel wiped out. The interesting thing though that you mentioned in terms of it's okay to not feel okay. One of the things that I've done, and I've done it for many years, is if I am not feeling okay, and it's been amplified and magnified during COVID, is I do what I call I have a pity party. And it's a pity party for one, and there's balloons and cake and everything. And I'll set a deadline to it. I'm going, okay, I'm going to feel like absolutely horrible now, and I'm going to wallow in self-pity and maybe go lie on the bed in a fetal position with the curtains or the blinds drawn, and just really get into how horrible I'm feeling, get all of that emotion out. And I put a time frame on it. So in the next, after an hour or so, then I'm back. I've had my pity party. I've let all of that emotion out, and I'm ready to carry on. Is that something that you would recommend as well?
Absolutely. I think, you've got to find what works for you, because everybody's different. And some people resort to things like exercise. Some people resort to meditation. Some people resort to just going and shutting off out from the world and putting earphones on and listening to music. It's whatever works for you, but also understanding that it might work for me today, but tomorrow it doesn't work for me. So then I need to find something else. So having tools in your toolbox that you can resort to as and when you need, knowing when to reach out. So support structure is hugely important. From a personal point of view, family or friends, in the workplace, if you have those kind of relationships with your boss or your colleagues, and if you don't, then reaching out to those professional organizations like Lifeline and SADC, or even counselors and people that can offer a level of support to help you work through it and to help you deal with what you're going through and what you're experiencing, because it is real for you, because you are going through it. It is your reality, not anybody else's.
Yeah, and you know what, I also think at this time, never underestimate the power of a phone call. If you're thinking about somebody, or there's a mate of yours that you haven't heard from or whatever, pick up the phone and just go, "Hi, how are you doing?" And then a typical South African response is, "I'm fine," which we all know stands for, I'm going to use the clean version now, fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So, we're not always, well, we are, a lot of the time we are fine, but, don't be scared. If somebody says to you, "How are you doing?" Give them an answer, and be prepared, if you ask the question, to get an answer.
Yeah, and I think that's where this whole, the labels that society has placed on us, or that we've allowed society to place on us, but also our own labels, in that, it's a weakness. We can't show emotion. We have to have all our stuff together and our life in place and in order, and this perfect life, perfect wife, perfect house, perfect husband, perfect everything is unrealistic. And of course, social media doesn't help. I mean, it's not called fake book for nothing, right?
Yeah. I don't even want to get into some of the awful stuff I've seen on social media, because people have just gone nuts. And it's like, I don't know, it seems to give people license to be mean and nasty. But if you are doing something like that, just think first. Goodness me. I saw something the other day about somebody who'd posted about the rumor about the government banning alcohol again, and they were so judgmental about the people and the queues, and they were this, that, and the next thing. Not a day later, there they start publishing pictures of all the booze they've bought, and I was like, wow, okay, hypocrite much?
Yeah, and it's we're quick to project our own stuff onto others, and so I call it the blame and the victim mentality. When we blame other things and other people for what's gone wrong in our lives, what we don't realize is the last two letters of the word blame ends in ME. And when I'm doing that, I'm avoiding taking accountability and responsibility for me and my contribution to the situation.
Oh, that's very good.
And the same with victim. The last two letters of victim is I'm the one that's put me in victim land or victim mode or mentality, and I'm the only one that can get me out of it by taking action.
Absolutely. Paula, it's that time. We're running out of time again. Before I let you go, and thank you so much for your time, it is much, much appreciated. Before I let you go, if somebody is struggling, if there's a business a business owner, an executive that's listening, or maybe there's a couple that are having some major hassles, can they contact you?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, so it's paulaquinsee.com. They can find me on social media platforms, so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and all my contact details are on those platforms. They're welcome to get in touch. Happy to help.
Fantastic. It's paulaquinsee.com, and it's spelled PAULAQUINSEE. So that's QUINSEE. Paula, before I let you go, one piece of advice that you would give to somebody listening now to start making a change in their lives.
Change is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. And it's one day at a time, one step at a time, that the small changes eventually lead to big shifts.
Fantastic stuff. Paula Quinsee, my special guest, thank you so much for chatting to us. We wish you all the best going forward. And yeah, I think to sum up where we are at the moment is this world of ours is becoming more about being human. And I remember one of my mentors always used to say to me, bear in mind whether you're a human being or a human doing. So I think it's time we worked on the human being part. Paula, again, thank you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing this time with you.
There we go. That was my special guest, Paula Quinsee. More What's Involved will be coming your way.